Hi, everybody, and welcome to Greek This Week with Father Tim. I'm your host, Father Tim. Now, before we get into our Greek word of the week, I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to my friend and teacher, Dr. Samuel Lonkar, and the Becoming Human Project. If you're curious about how I became interested and passionate about learning about Greek, ancient Greek, and the context of Scripture, I really encourage you all to check out Samuel's YouTube channel. There is a video series he's created called The Bible and Philosophy. The first video is called The Bible and Philosophy, the Jewish Revolution, and there's a link to it here, which I'll also include below. And I just want to thank Sam for inspiring my interest in Greek and also encourage all of you to learn from Samuel about why exactly it's important to study and learn the Greek context when we're studying Scripture. So, with that, we will go on to our Greek word of the week. And our word this week is Zoe, which is usually translated as life. Zoe. This word appears very often in Scripture, as you might imagine, but I want to look at one particular verse, which is from our Sunday readings coming up this Sunday, and that is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 15. Moses said, "See, I have set before you today life, Zoe, and prosperity, death, and adversity." Now, there are usually three meanings of Zoe. The first is an older meaning and definition, which comes probably originally from Homer, and that has something to do with how somebody makes their living, we would say, or somebody's property or substance or wealth even, how somebody makes a living. That's the first meaning of Zoe. The second, of course, is the one we're probably most familiar with, which means life or even existence. This is usually opposed to death. There's also a third meaning, which is more specific and has to do with somebody's way of life. So somebody's way of living, their practices, their customs, their ethics, their beliefs, etc., somebody's way of life. Now, the example from Greek literature outside of Scripture that I'd like to look at comes from the Odyssey, from Homer's Odyssey, Book 14, line 96, where the swineherd and friend of Odysseus, named Eumaeus, uses this word Zoe to describe someone who has abundant property and wealth, especially herds of sheep and goats in this instance. Now, there are a couple ideas here that are interesting for us to reflect on when we're thinking about this word and how it relates to Scripture and how it's used in Scripture. And the first is that Zoe clearly is something of tremendous value, perhaps even unending value. And Zoe seems to bring about abundance, even more abundance than it originally has. It's kind of an overflowing energy that brings more good things from its already its goodness. And then the second idea is that Zoe seems to be very connected to both the land and also to creation. We might say non-human lives and beings in creation, like animals, for example, in the story from the Odyssey. But we also see in this passage from Deuteronomy deep connections between Zoe, life, and the land, as Moses describes it, the land that God is giving to the people Israel. So that is our Greek this week, and I hope you enjoy this and you find this enriching in your daily life. Thank you all.